people, humans, block things in their mind because it's traumatizing. And as her and I worked together, memories started coming back of me. Hey, young world. Happy Wednesday. Today is a new episode of Girl Talk. I'm definitely hoping my microphone does not run out of batteries or does not die, because I swear to goodness, y'all, I keep forgetting to press record. I swear I've been talking to y'all for the last 30 minutes and not a damn thing recorded. So we're going to try this again. On my last episode of Living Single Over 50, I was mentioning depression and how I handle it. And I know there was a few people in the comments who asked me if I considered therapy, whether it was in person or virtual. So I just wanted to touch on that in this Girl Talk. So I have done therapy twice in my life. Most recently, resulting from my last relationship, I was in therapy for a year and a half. And so I want to say that would have been from the summer of 2022 until winter of 2023. So when I sought out my therapist, it was at a time when I felt like I had nowhere to go and I felt like I needed to be saved. And I mentioned a lot of that. A lot of things that I'm going to mention now, I've mentioned throughout older episodes, but I'm going to try to reiterate everything at a much higher level. When I was dating my ex-husband, and when I would have problems with him, so the shit that he put me through when we was married, there was 100% signs of them, of those scenarios when we were dating. And I would go and talk to my mom, my sisters, my daughters, whomever, about the situation. So when I married the man, I told him that I would not take the situations that would happen in our house outside of our house. So when I sought out my therapist, it was because I felt like I had nowhere to go and I felt like I needed to save myself. Not save myself because of my fear of him, but save myself because I was at my wit's end and I didn't know if I was going to be able to carry myself the right way in that relationship, not lose everything because of this relationship. I just didn't know. So essentially, I needed a therapist to keep me from being locked up. That's just honest. The honest truth. So when I saw my therapist, I was going through emotional, mental abuse. The incidents when he um, decided to take sex from me was the incidents when he hit me in my leg or hit me in my head. I mentioned all this through a different episode. So some may consider that physical assault. When I first went to my therapist, I didn't mention any of the physical situation when I first went to her. I did talk about the emotional stuff. And the reason why I did not mention to her any of this is because I did not want nothing to happen to my husband at the time. I did not want to hurt my husband at the time. I did not want him to be locked up at the time. Period, point blank. To be very clear, to be very honest. Um, when I first sat down with my therapist, not doing the vetting part, because everybody should know that there's a pro bono meeting where, when you reach out to a therapy center, you meet your therapist, they ask you all these questions, why you feel like you need therapists, this, that, and other, so on and so forth. Well, during that time, I felt like, just like she was asking me all these questions, I was vetting her to make sure she was the right therapist for me. The only other way I can explain it is that it's kind of like when you go for a job. Me mentoring both of my daughters, I always tell them, when you go for a job, keep in mind that that job, those people on the other side of the table are not only interviewing you, you are also interviewing them to make sure the culture of that job is something that you actually want to commit to, right? Well, I feel the same way about therapy. I need to know that the person who I'm going to be spilling my guts out to, from a clinical perspective, is actually a person who's going to work for me, not working to get a paycheck. So through this vetting session, that's who I found. You all know that I'm from Austin, Texas, and it is very hard to find therapists of color in Austin, right? Therapists who can relate to what you have been through in life as a Black woman in Austin. It's not easy. So my therapist was a very nice, liberal white woman. And when I say she was very nice and liberal, she was. My therapist, my therapist proved that she wanted to work for me because she was willing to compromise with me. She was willing to adjust the fees and adjust her schedule so that she could help me. Now, keep in mind, I work a full-time job, so during the week, I'm working. On the weekends, typically on Saturdays, I'm with my family. The time that I had to go to therapy was Sunday after church. Therapy, the quote that was given to me initially in therapy was, I want to say, $200 a session every week for 50 minutes. My therapist was willing to go down to $175 every week for 50 minutes. After I separated from my ex-husband, she was willing to go bi-weekly, go to bi-weekly sessions down to $165 bi-weekly. Still on Sundays. This woman, because she was empathetic of what I was going through, she adjusted her schedule until she adjusted her schedule in the fees until she couldn't adjust her schedule in the fees anymore. And that's when I stopped going to therapy. So that's what I mean by finding a therapist that is willing to work for you and not for the money. Her company changed and she could not follow the requirements of her company after a year and a half of her serving me. And I had to respect that. If her company had not have changed, I would still be in therapy with that woman today, because I feel like even though she was not a woman of color, she was empathetic. She wanted to understand. She wanted to help. And she also said, if I find out if any harm, hurt, or danger comes to you, I will call and bring in people who will take care of the matter for you. That is why I didn't mention anything about the sexual situation. And to be honest with you, to be frank with you, at the very beginning, I really didn't mention much about the mental emotional abuse. But I didn't have to, because when I went off into therapy and actually started meeting with her, this woman asked all the right questions. She would see me sitting out in her parking lot 2 hours before my session, and she's trying to figure out, why am I there? So she started asking questions that I had to be honest about. So I agree with everybody or most when they say therapy is very helpful. And I think it can be with the right people, with the right person, right? Has to be the right person. When we found out her schedule had changed, or her company had changed and she had to go up under new requirements, she could no longer work on Sundays. She was only able to work Monday through Fridays. Virtual sessions would work, but it was up to a certain time and all this kind of stuff. If not, I had to call a hotline. All this other stuff was going on that I just was like, okay, well, it's limiting me. She said, but what I can do is refer you. If you would like to continue therapy sessions, I can refer you to someone that could, accommodate you. I opted out of that referral because referring me to someone to accommodate me is like requesting me to go on a blind date. What you see in that person that you're referring me to may not be what I see in that person. That person may not do nothing for me. So I feel like if I was to ever to go back to therapy, going back to therapy, I would have to go back through the entire vetting session again, and to make sure that that therapist is someone that I feel comfortable with, right? So since I opted out of that referral, blogging and content creation has definitely been a lifesaver for me in my journaling. And the reason why I say that is because Whenever I have something on my mind, I just cut on. I just start recording, child. That's why the majority of the time when y'all talk to me, I'm just sitting in one place talking because I'm just putting it all out there. And what I don't put out there, I put in my journals, right? And the reason why I put them in my journal is because I've been working on a book for the past couple of years now. And a lot of the content from that book, for that book, has come out of my journals that I have been writing since I was a teen, right? Um, when I started writing that book, there was a great deal of my life, younger in life, that I couldn't remember, right? So I went to my mom and I said, "Well, Mom, I really can't remember this time period. This is what I remember. This is what I can't remember." And during that conversation, my mom was like, "Well, you don't remember being pregnant at 12?" I was like, "Who?" She said, "You don't remember that?" And I was like, "No." Right? Um, so she said, "Well, I will make sure that I'm saying the right age, but it definitely happened." Like my mom, like me, my mom journals just as much to this day. So as I was going through therapy, um, I was explaining to my therapist about this discussion that I was having with my mom, and I was telling her how it came as a surprise to me because it was something that I just could not remember, something that I put out of my mind. And she explained to me that typically we people, humans, block things in their mind because it's traumatizing. And as her and I worked together, memories started coming back of me being sexually assaulted at 12, which then my mom was able to confirm that I had an abortion, which I also couldn't remember at the age of 13. So my trauma goes back a long way. Um, and I think what makes things dangerous for people in my life, well, maybe I'm saying it. I think what makes me dangerous now is that I did go to therapy. And now that I remember so much of my life that I didn't remember, I started rewriting my book. And not only have I started rewriting my book, but I've started being honest about situations that have happened to me in the past that I've never shared with people. And it's not because my intentions are to hurt anyone, it's to make sure people can understand this is why I move the way I do. This is why I don't want specific people around me. This is why certain people can't know where I stay. This is why all these things, because of the first century of my life. And maybe not first century because, I was, but a significant amount of the first century of my life. That's the reason why. Because, you know, um, from the sexual assault at 12 to being jumped on by a boy uh, to someone playing on my kindness, to trying to take advantage of me sexually again, to um, being in a relationship with a man who tried to put his hands on me then, and then to this situation. It's just been a lot. It's been a lot for one woman to have to go through and to still be able to function as a human and be strong. And what I'm not finna do, honey, is I'm not finna cry and I'm not finna get emotional. We finna get this out and we're gonna get off the tape. But it's a lot for someone to have have gone through. And so I think that's what makes me dangerous today, is because I went through therapy and I'm standing in my truth about everything. My therapist taught me so much more about boundaries. She taught me how to forgive myself, because that was a period of my time, quite a bit of my life. I wasn't forgiving myself because of situations that had happened. And that's one thing that I would tell y'all, that I've said on all of my girl talk, is that I accept accountabilities. I accept this accountability for this last relationship because I shouldn't have never went back to the fool. I accept accountability for other things because I shouldn't have never been in those situations, or in those places, and or trusted individuals or any of that. So I'm accepting of this, because that's one thing where people would try to play on your top about, is that they'll ask you, well, what did you do wrong in a situation? Well, I know where I went wrong. I know, and I accept it. But what no one can't tell me is that any child, especially at the age of 12, can consent to that. No one can tell me that. And so as I continue through my life, continue on my journey, continue to heal, because that was my whole premise of of starting to vlog and doing content creation, is to heal more. Um, I'm taking all the tools that my therapist has given me, and I'm putting them into play. You know what I mean? And it's working for me. And it's helping me to be even more confident in who I am, because my family has always seen me as a strong person, the strong one of the family. But there's so much that they're finding out now that probably kind of helps them realize why I've always had this strong demeanor and personality. Um, so I'm going to close by saying that is one of the reasons why you should always check on your girlfriends, your cousins, your besties, your sisters, who you feel like are the strongest, because you never know what they've been through. You never know what they've been through. You never know what they're going through. You never know what they are harboring. Um, in hiding while they continue to maneuver through life. So before I leave, I do want to say, me standing in my truth and what could potentially come out, not only in my vlog, but in my book, is not to hurt anyone and not telling anyone to move a certain way. People have to do what's best for them, right? I have to do what's best for me. So even if I share something that um, may bother someone, or maybe about someone you know, how you deal with that person is how you deal. If you still want to deal with that person, that's on you. Just don't try to push that person off on me to deal with, because it's not gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen. I just be honest with you. I'm gonna keep it a book. So, and I say that because I know I have friends and family that follow my vlog. Um, but know that I love you all, and know that um I know everybody's going through something, and I know that someone else's experience through life may have had so much more turmoil than mine. Um, but I do hope that as I walk through my journey and heal, what you guys see can help the next person walk through their journey and heal as well. So that's all that I have for today. And I will chat with you guys soon.